It's time for an inside look at what's cooking on the San Diego Padres hot stove as the team gets ready for the 2025 season.
Swing and a miss. Padres win.
Sam Levitt breaks down the Padres offseason moves and provides an in-depth look at everything you need to know before the Padres take the field for spring training.
Swinging a high fly ball. Deep left center. This one way back and gone.
Plus the latest headlines from around Major League Baseball and analysis of what's happening around the big leagues.
Breaking news out of baseball.
Welcome to Inside San Diego Baseball with the Padres Radio Network's pre- and post-game host, Sam Levitt.
We are live on Inside San Diego Baseball on this Wednesday night on 97.3 The Fan. Sam Levitt with you from our East Coast studios here on 97.3 The Fan. I don't know that we officially have East Coast studios, but that is what the Levitt household here on Long Island will be here tonight. Yes, I am in New York, in the New York City area, where I'm broadcasting here tonight. The great usage of technology, of internet. We can do a show pretty much from anywhere in the world. I mean, I could be in Japan. We'll talk about a Japanese right-hander in the first couple of segments here. I could be anywhere in the world doing tonight's show, and I'm coming to you from just outside Queens here in New York, here at my parents' house, spending a little time at home. I have not been at home in nearly a calendar year, so doing a little two things at once, some good family time, had a wedding up in Buffalo. I was in Buffalo for the very first time ever on Sunday for a wedding. Nice time, good wedding, my cousin's wedding, had a lot of fun. Went to Niagara Falls, that was a lot of fun, something worth seeing if you're ever in the area there in western New York. You can cross over to the Canada side, look at the falls from there. Really interesting thing to do, and then took the trip home back to New York. Flew into JFK, and now I'm here in New York, and we'll have a full show for you from the East Coast here tonight, and everything will be fairly normal. We'll take your phone calls throughout the program at 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973, the phone number to call as always. And before I preview what we've got coming up, Frank Marchese back in our studio in San Diego. Frank, how are you?
Doing good. Doing very good. Fun, scrappy show just now, and ready to have another fun 2 hours with you this week on episode 2.
Yes, episode 2. We got rave reviews for episode number 1. In fact, many are saying they may give out the Marconi Awards to Inside San Diego Baseball.
I agree.
For episode 1.
Our parents really enjoyed it. You're right.
Well, there wasn't a whole lot to talk about, but we made 2 hours of Padres radio. Again, if you're just joining us for the first time during the off season here, every Wednesday night, 7 to 9 p.m., Inside San Diego Baseball with me, Sam Levitt, the Padres pre- and post-game host on the Padres Radio Network, and just a good opportunity to talk all things Padres baseball, to connect with you in the off-season, and I'm sure we're going to have more and more news as the off-season, as the winter rolls along. So we'll get to a lot here tonight to preview what we've got coming up. And before we do that, I do want to bring something up to Frank here that's going to make him very jealous. But to preview the show here tonight, we'll touch on a number of different topics. First couple of segments here, we'll talk about what is the biggest news, you could argue, in baseball right now as far as players that are signing places. Now, you could argue that Juan Soto is story number 1, but you could also argue, for a number of reasons, that the Japanese right-hander, 23-year-old Roki Sasaki, where he will sign may be the biggest story, not just right now, but of this offseason in Major League Baseball. You could very well make that argument because where he goes, because of his talent level, and because of how cheap he's going to be as far as the money that any major league team that signs him is going to have to fork over, he may be the most valuable player on the market this offseason. You could make that argument despite Juan Soto, who likely is going to make $500, $600 million, get that from somebody. You could really make the argument that Sasaki may be the number 1 story as far as where he goes and what it means to that team and what it means to Roki Sasaki. So, first couple of segments here, we'll talk about Sasaki. Coming up a little bit later, we'll revisit what J.J. Cooper of Baseball America had to say about Sasaki on the Ben and Woods program earlier today. That was this morning. Some interesting stuff from J.J. Cooper. So we'll review that and go back, listen to what J.J. Cooper had to say. We'll go over some major league headlines, things that have gone on in the last week or so. We'll also go through the finalist for the Baseball Writers of America Association. The finalists announced for awards like MVP, Cy Young, Rookie of the Year. Obviously, Rookie of the Year is an award that we'll keep a very close eye on. Manager of the Year as well. That's an award that we'll keep a very close eye on as well. So we'll go through those awards one by one, and Frank and I will kind of give you, I think the way we'll do it a little bit later is we will give you who we would pick, but then also who we think will win, because those might be two different answers. So we'll go through that, and we'll also talk about this story, and Scraby mentioned it a little bit earlier. This story that was on ESPN.com about Garrett Crochet trade targets. And what was brought up there, because I think not that I think that the Padres are going to trade for Garrett Crochet, but I do think it brings up a pretty interesting point based on that article. So we will talk about that a little bit later. So we'll get into that. We'll get into Sasaki here in just a second. Before we get to that, just to wrap up the silly stuff here at the start of the show, Frank Marchese, I want you to listen to some of the things I had to eat in the last 24 hours. Really?
You're going to do this to me now?
Hold on. Well, while the words were coming out of my mouth, I'm going to be totally honest with you. I was not thinking of it from the...
Oh, of course. I know you weren't trying to make me jealous. You're just trying to eat. But really,
no.
At this point?
No. I was not thinking of it from your wonderful journey. I was thinking of it more from the East Coast part of it, like, oh, I had some nice pizza. I'm just going to stop. This was not thought out well. I swear this was not
we're already too far into this hole to
we're
back out of it,
well,
so go for it.
Let's, Frankie, let's live in a world where, what is it? However long from now where, you're back to, getting some pizza or whatever. Had some nice pizza, had a nice Greek salad with some chicken.
Okay.
Bagel. There we go. You will get there, my friend.
That was it. You've had pizza and a Greek salad with chicken. That's it.
Well, no, that's not it. Totally. But I put it this way. I've had my fill of good East Coast foods the last 24, 48 hours. Frank, don't walk away now from the board. All right? You got to hang in there with me. Oh, my goodness. See, I do swear, though. I swear. I was coming at that from the East Coast.
No, I know what you were doing. I know.
Food perspective. All right. Time to shut my mouth. No more eating for me today. All right. Frank doing a great job. Let's get into Roki Sasaki. Biggest news the last week, Sasaki, the story breaking, I think it was Friday night, might have been Saturday night. Sasaki getting posted by the Chiba Lotte Mariners of Japan's MPB. So, start with this, if you're just catching up on the story. The 23-year-old, an absolute star in Japan, a fastball that reaches over 100 miles per hour, a devastating splitter, a terrific slider. From a pure stuff perspective, he's great, and he's somebody that has been on the radar of not just the Padres, but major league teams for a really, really long time now. And like I said a little bit earlier, he immediately becomes the most or second most coveted prize in this year's offseason. And the situation is unique because of two reasons. Number one, he doesn't cost much at all. And number two, like we said earlier, he can quite literally pick any team he wants. Now, is he going to go to the Sacramento Athletics, who are not really called the Sacramento Athletics? I doubt it. Are there a number of teams in the Midwest that, probably aren't going to sign him? Probably. Is it probably going to be a bigger market team? Probably. Based on, where guys have gone in the past from Japan, the Cubs, the Dodgers, certainly the Padres in that mix as well. So it probably isn't a situation where he's saying, maybe I'll go to Sacramento, but he can go to any team he wants. And the price point is friendly to every team in Major League Baseball. So why doesn't Roki Sasaki cost very much? Well, let's dive into it a little bit. For those of you who maybe haven't heard about it or don't quite know why. Well, because of the MPB posting rules, any player who comes over to the majors before the age of 25 is limited to signing a minor league deal, with the signing bonus coming from a team's international bonus pool money, which is capped at just more than $7.5 million. Now, a good example, a good correlation to this situation is the situation with Shohei Ohtani. He went through the same thing before the 2018 season. He signed for only $2.3 million with the Angels. Remember that. He was not making very much money in Anaheim whatsoever, but what did it do? It set him up for when he was a free agent to sign ultimately what's a $700 million contract with the Dodgers, and part of that reason is he was a free agent at a younger age. Now, Ohtani, a very different player than anybody else in Major League Baseball, but it was a similar situation back before the 2018 season where he was coming over in the same deal where he could sign a minor league deal, get some portion of a team's international bonus pool money. Same kind of thing. Now, we just saw the other side of this with Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who waited to come to the United States until he turned 25. And once you turn 25, you're then able to sign whatever kind of contract you want. So he signed a huge $325 million contract with the Dodgers last winter. So while Sasaki misses the chance to sign in a couple of years and get that big money like Yamamoto did, the benefits of coming to the majors earlier, a couple of reasons. Again, you can hit free agency earlier and you can put your mark on Major League Baseball earlier, make endorsement money. There are reasons to it, but what you give up is the opportunity again to get a contract like Yamamoto got just last winter. It's also worth noting that this process with Roki Sasaki is going to take a while because Sasaki is very likely going to wait to decide who he's signing with until December 15th. That's when the current international signing pool period ends. Then he could officially sign with a team after January 15th when the 2025 signing period opens. Because right now, no major league team has more than $2.5 million remaining in their pool money. So if he waits until the next international signing period starts, every team has a fresh $7.5 million to spend. It's likely Sasaki would get the majority of that money from a team. Now, it doesn't mean we may not know until January 15th where he's signing. It means it can't officially happen until January 15th. Maybe they can't put pen to paper until January 15th. I would imagine before January 15th, we'll know where Sasaki is going, but may not become official until mid-January when that international signing period opens up for 2025. There were a couple of articles I wanted to just reference here as we wrap up this initial conversation on Sasaki, get an idea of who Sasaki is and where he may go. This was from Jeff Passan on ESPN.com a number of days ago. Jeff writes, Los Angeles, he's talking about the Dodgers, will be linked strongly to Sasaki, but assuming he will go to the Dodgers is premature. While the presence of Sasaki's Samurai Japan teammates Ohtani and Yamamoto in Los Angeles is an advantage, the attention they bring and the media horde that follows them adds a different element than other teams. Throughout the 2024 season, MLB presidents of baseball operations and general managers were fixtures at Sasaki's starts. Sasaki's close with right-hander Yu Darvish, whose team, the San Diego Padres, figures to be a potential landing spot. Both New York teams have extreme interest in Sasaki, though he could opt for an organization with pedigree and experience. The Cubs, a team in an international city. The Blue Jays, one whose past success with Japanese players still resonates. Darvish started his career with with the Rangers, or those whose reputation for bringing the best out in players might appeal, the Rays. Plenty of other franchises can and will make strong appeals to Sasaki once he is posted. Now, when the news came out, and that was Jeff Passan writing, this is me talking now. When the news came out about Sasaki getting posted, in all likelihood, yes, immediately on social media, immediately a number of different national writers essentially said that in all likelihood he's going to the Dodgers. Now, could he go to the LA Dodgers? Sure, absolutely. Would it make sense for Roki Sasaki on a number of different levels to go to the Dodgers? Let's be honest about it. It would, for the reasons that Jeff Passan just wrote about. The fact that Ohtani's there, the fact that Yamamoto's there, the fact that we know the Dodgers are a really good team and they're going to be very competitive for a long time. And there would be a lot of reasons, they're on the West Coast, that Sasaki would go there and be a part of what is, I know nobody wants to hear this in San Diego, but what's a great team in the LA Dodgers? That's no secret. The defending now World Series champions. Yes, I think it's obvious why there would be reasons, good reasons, for Sasaki to go to the LA Dodgers. But as Jeff wrote there, and as we'll talk a little bit more about, I mean, who knows? I'm not sold really on this idea that Roki Sasaki at this moment knows exactly where he wants to go, or at the very least, that the San Diego Padres don't have a legitimate good chance to sign Sasaki. I want to read this from Dennis Lin as we wrap up this opening segment on Sasaki. This was in The Athletic. This was either over the weekend or earlier this week. This was from Dennis Lin. Again, a little bit of a long part of his article here, but again, I think something worth reading, important to read. This is from Dennis Lin. Now, Sasaki, who Padres officials figured would be posted by the Chibalote Marines either this winter or next, is set to make the move from Japan. For guidance, Sasaki can turn to Darvish, who has been a friend, mentor, and a World Baseball Classic teammate. It also feels noteworthy that Sasaki's representation is expected to include Darvish's longtime agent, Joel Wolfe, who publicly praised Preller for his handling of Darvish's situation, given the sometimes adversarial world of GM agent relationships. The gesture was not typical. Dennis continues to write here, quote, AJ is a somewhat mysterious person, and I know to his staff and coaches the way he operates, he moves at the speed of light and works all hours, literally, Wolf told The Athletic after Darvish rejoined the Padres in August. This is another quote here from Wolf. But throughout all this, he was always there for Darvish every day if he ever needed him, whether it was to meet face-to-face or on the phone. And the one thing that came through that I realized early on is he knows Darvish much better than anyone in baseball. He's known him longer even than I have because he met him and got to know him and know everything about him since Darvish was even in high school when AJ was working for the Rangers, and knew everything about how he was raised and his family. I know that's what Darvish was alluding to when he was talking to the media about AJ being a true friend to him. He really meant it, that there were things that they could talk about that only AJ would understand. Wolf continues here, and I'm grateful to AJ for his support throughout this. I just want it to be said. Again, that was Joel Wolf, the agent of Yu Darvish, who had that quote there about AJ Preller, talking about the relationship between AJ and Yu Darvish. And the reason I read all that, the reason I bring it up, is again to make the point that there would be reason, and I think a number of reasons, for Roki Sasaki to pick the San Diego Padres. I really believe that. I would like to think that this relationship with Yu Darvish, with the Padres and AJ Preller, showed Yu Darvish this past season from just a personal standpoint, like we just heard about from that quote from Yu Darvish's agent, Joel Wolf. I'd like to think that there's something to that between the Padres, their team, the fact that they are competitive right now, very competitive right now, the fact that Yu Darvish is here, the fact that AJ Preller did what he did for Yu Darvish during this past season, that AJ Preller has been on Roki Sasaki for a really long time, amongst a number of other reasons. I just think there's a strong case to be made that Sasaki could end up choosing the San Diego Padres. Do I know that for sure? Does anybody know that for sure? Absolutely not. But if it's not going to be the Dodgers, man, I think the Padres would end up making a lot of sense for Roki Sasaki. And if he were to make that decision, it would be enormous for the Padres, not just for 2025, but for many, many years to come. So we'll continue when we come back from this break to talk more about Roki Sasaki. We'll hear what J.J. Cooper of Baseball America had to say earlier about Sasaki right here on 97.3 The Fan. And we'll continue to discuss the reasons why Sasaki may not go to L.A. or may not go anywhere else and may decide to eventually come to San Diego, because I think there is an argument to it, and even beyond the reasons that we just discussed here in the opening segment. Again, if you want to get a phone call in, 833-288-0973. Again, the phone number, 833-288-0973. We will take your phone calls throughout the 2-hour program here. We are taking you up until 9 p.m. here on 97.3 The Fan. Inside San Diego Baseball, the second edition of our Padres offseason program. Our Roki Sasaki and Padres talk continues after this on 97.3 The Fan. Tonight's edition of Inside San Diego Baseball continues here on 97.3 The Fan. Sam Levitt with you on this Wednesday night as we continue to talk all things Padres baseball. The Padres getting this off-season rolling. We are in sort of an interesting time of year, pre-winter meetings. It is November the 13th, so we are still very early. Free agency is really just begun. There have been some moves already, many of them, really seems like almost all of them, made by a team just up the road in Anaheim. Angels have been very, very busy so far. We'll get to a little bit of that later in the program as we continue to talk about the Padres offseason. Roki Sasaki, the big topic of this opening hour, opening couple of segments here. If you want to get a phone call in, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. If you want to talk about Roki Sasaki or anything else Padres related, taking you up until 9 p.m. on this Wednesday night. Sam Levitt with you. Again, I am, we'd like to take you behind the curtain here. I am in New York right now, remotely talking to you in San Diego. Yes, technology is amazing. And Frank Marchese back in our San Diego studios, holding down the fort, doing a great job getting us on the air here tonight. Well, J.J. Cooper of Baseball America, who does a great job with a number of different things, minor league related, international signing class related. He's really one of the premier baseball writers, journalists that talks about international signings and player development and all those types of things. Does a great job, and JJ has done a great job for a really long time. He was on Ben and Woods earlier this morning, and I'm sure many of you listening may have missed the interview with J.J. Cooper earlier this morning here on 97.3 The Fan, and I thought J.J. did a great job talking about Roki Sasaki, breaking down the situation of how this process may go down with this just phenomenal 23-year-old right-hander from Japan. So let's play a couple of cuts from that interview earlier today. We'll react to them as we go. This was Baseball America's J.J. Cooper earlier today on Ben and Woods. Here was J.J. on where he thinks Roki Sasaki could ultimately go.
I would say that in my reporting, the Dodgers and the Padres are the two teams that come up as like, here's the case for why he's going to end up there.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because this is unique. I mean, this is a weird situation because on the one side, this is a player that all 30 teams should be trying to acquire, right? Because when Shohei Ohtani hits free agency, let's just be honest about it, there are 20 teams like the Kansas City Royals, the Minnesota Twins, the Cincinnati Reds, the Miami Marlins, all those teams, they're not part of the discussion, right? They're not going to devote $40 million of payroll to one player, even if it's deferred. But this case, we're talking about a player who's going to be coming over for fractions of what he's worth, right? We're talking about one of the best young pitchers in the world. And to acquire him is going to cost somewhere between $2 and $8 million in a signing bonus and major league minimum, basically, for the next 2 years.
Wow.
So everyone should want that. Now, he has a choice, though. He gets to choose where he wants to go, and that's why the Dodgers, who obviously are the preeminent team in baseball right now, the World Series champs, and a team that has done very well has multiple Japanese stars already, but then the Padres have Roki Sasaki's best friend in baseball in the major leagues in Yu Darvish. So both of these teams have kind of like a logic to them, although, again, this is a player that all 30 teams should be trying to acquire.
So that was J.J. Cooper of Baseball America earlier today on Ben and Woods here on 97.3 The Fan. And again, J.J. sort of laying out the entire situation there about why Sasaki truly is available to all 30 major league teams. Now, is he going to talk with all 30 major league teams? I would doubt it. But it's that kind of situation where money is not the issue here. Normally, when you have a talent the quality of Roki Sasaki, and you have the ability to get him for a number of seasons, That typically, when it comes down to free agency, comes down to money. We're going to see it play out with Juan Soto, where realistically there are a few teams that can even handle or want to hand out that level of contract. That is not the situation with Sasaki. It's not about money. Any team can have him for essentially, international signing bonus pool money and the major league minimum. So it's about where does Sasaki want to go. That is what the sales pitch is going to be. Not about how much a team, including the Padres, can pay Sasaki, but it's about what do you bring Sasaki? Why should he sign with you? And we detailed what the Padres can bring to the table. We talked about the relationship with Yu Darvish. You would like to think that is something that will play a major factor in this process, in this decision. We talked about A.J. Preller's relationship with Darvish, the fact that he's been on Sasaki, as we know, for quite some time. You hope that's something that will play a major factor. You hope the fact that the Padres won 93 games a year ago, the fact that they have been competitive, the fact that they are a West Coast team, which in some cases Japanese players have seemed to prefer. The proximity to Asia, to Japan, has seemingly played at least somewhat of a role in decision-making in the past. The fact that the Padres have a pitching coach in Ruben Niebla, who is no doubt one of the best in Major League Baseball, if not the best in Major League Baseball. The fact that if Sasaki, as some have reported, is looking for maybe a little bit more of a relaxed environment, maybe looking to pave his own way a little bit rather than going to L.A. and joining guys like Ohtani and Yamamoto, well, the Padres would also suit that need as well. Maybe a little bit more of a laid-back environment. Not that, Padres fans don't want to win. Of course they want to win. But maybe a place that, is a really, really nice place to live. It's laid back. It's sunny. And Sasaki can, sort of be a little bit more on his own. But again, alongside somebody he grew up reportedly idolizing in Yu Darvish. Those are the reasons I would like to think that San Diego would be really attractive to Roki Sasaki. So let's hear a little bit more here from J.J. Cooper. Again, this was earlier today on Ben and Woods, Baseball America's J.J. Cooper. Interesting stuff here, really worthwhile hearing this. This was J.J. Cooper, more about Roki Sasaki's life and his journey to this point.
He's already endured a lot. And when he was a 9-year-old, there was an earthquake that basically he lost his father and his grandparents, right? So he kind of went through a lot at a very young age. And, again, like this is all kind of secondhand, but like it was something where he, so he had to grow up very quickly. And then there does seem to be this subtext of the way I've had him described to me is you are talking about a guy who at his best has an exceptional fastball and exceptional splitter. I'm talking as good as anybody. Now, what we haven't seen yet is where it all clicks, and he's got control too. Like, you kind of look at it and say, why hasn't he's been incredible at his best, but you kind of ask, why hasn't he had that season already where you say, oh, he's just the best pitcher in Japan? And there's been, injuries. There's been kind of, it does seem like in some ways almost it does seem like it would not surprise me if everything clicked in the U.S., in the major leagues, in a way it hasn't yet. I mean, he is still very young. We are talking about a pitcher who's basically Paul Skeens' age, right?
Yeah.
And so he's had 4 years pitching in the MPB, but if Paul Skeens had a good year this year, but not an incredible year in the majors, we wouldn't be saying what's wrong with Paul Skeens. Why hasn't it all clicked yet?
Right.
Right. So if this is a pitcher whose the future is very bright, and it's really more ahead of him than behind, is the way I would put it.
That's
so,
a good point.
If you told me, and to go back to, for whatever team lands him, this is the safest, quote, gamble you'll ever face.
Yep.
Because the analogy I will also use on this isn't, again, they're different pitchers, but if you said that Spencer Strider or Garrett Crochet was available on the free agent market for a few $1 million, and they were going to sign a minor league contract, so you would have team control for 6 years, and they're going to be major league minimum for the next several years. 30 out of 30 teams would be like, where do I sign up for this?
Yep.
Well, Spencer Strider's had 2 Tommy John surgeries already, right? So there's some durability risk there with Spencer Strider, but at his best, he's a Cy Young caliber pitcher. Roki Sasaki has yet to have the season where he throws 108 innings. He yet to have the season where he throws 150 innings. But it's not really a risk when you're talking about that he's going to sign a deal that, you know, the team that signs him, the other player they would be giving that to is a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, you know, Latin American prospect who it might all come together or who might never make it out of, Class A. So this is kind of like the safest, quote, bet that anyone can take because we've also seen the track record. We saw not just Yoshinobu Yamamoto last year, but look at Shota Imanaga. Look at what we've seen from, a number, Kodai Senga a couple of years ago coming over to the Mets. The track record of Japanese starting pitchers coming over is pretty good.
It's a really good point by J.J. Cooper. Again, that was J.J. Cooper of Baseball America earlier today on Ben and Woods here on 97.3 The Fan. Sam Levitt back with you on Inside San Diego Baseball. It's actually a great point from J.J. Cooper on the success of Japanese pitchers that have come over as of late. Really is. And it's another reason why Sasaki is such a prize of this offseason. And to JJ's point, what's the gamble? There is no gamble because of the little you have to pay Sasaki, right? The only thing you are guaranteeing to Sasaki is that probably big portion of the international signing pool, international signing bonus pool money, right? So that's your major investment. Then he's going to make the minimum. And yes, in arbitration down the line, and if you have to extend them one day, yes, that's all stuff you'll have to worry about years from now. And you hope it's something you do have to worry about because that means Sasaki is a really, really great starting pitcher in Major League Baseball. But I thought the point by JJ, just in general, was a great point. Think about the Japanese pitchers that have come over as of late that have been really, really good right away. Ohtani is in that category. I know it took a little while for Ohtani to get going and become the guy that he's become on both sides. And in all likelihood, we'll see him pitch next year again for the Dodgers. But my goodness, he's turned into, I think, beyond whatever you could have imagined. Yoshinobu Yamamoto obviously had a bit of an up and down first season. Dealt with injuries, but again, my goodness, we saw him really turn it on in the postseason, and there was a stretch of the regular season for the Dodgers as well where he was really, really good in his first year. I thought the example there from JJ, Kodai Senga of the New York Mets had an outstanding first season. Shota Imanaga was incredible for the first couple of months for the Chicago Cubs. To JJ's point, and it's just a good overall point, when we talk about pitchers coming over from Japan, the track record, especially in the last handful of years, is actually very, very good of guys coming over and very quickly having success. Now, again, Sasaki is an interesting pitcher for so many reasons, because of his stuff, because of how hard he throws, the splitter, the slider, and the fact that he's number 123 years old, and to JJ's point, has not had a season where he's thrown 150 innings, right? And if you do make sort of that calculation, or a better word for it would be that comparison between Sasaki and, let's say, the example there was Spencer Strider, right, who's had Tommy John surgeries now, who's thrown a lot of innings before, who's, thrown a lot of pitches in Major League Baseball already. If you can get the quality of a Strider, of a real ace in Major League Baseball, a known quantity in Major League Baseball right now, and you get it in the form of Sasaki, who's not had any of those surgeries, who's not thrown a ton of innings, who the stuff is really, really good. Yeah, it's the exact reason, and I know we've kind of hammered the point into the ground now in these opening two segments. It is part of the reason why the Padres signing this guy would be so massive. And I don't mean to say that it would be a failure if the Padres don't sign him. I think a lot of this is a situation where the Padres could put their absolute best foot forward make a great sales pitch and do everything in their power to go get this guy, Roki Sasaki, they could do everything absolutely right. And Sasaki still could decide to go somewhere else, whether that's LA or whether that's another team across Major League Baseball. That's the reality. So I will not view this as some sort of failure if the Padres don't sign Roki Sasaki, but if they can find a way, it's massive because it makes their rotation that much better. They get an absolute stud for so little money in the big picture. And just for this offseason alone, it takes care of one spot in your rotation and doesn't hurt your budget at all. That's why it would be so huge. And you would be getting one heck of a player and a prospect in this Japanese right-hander, Roki Sasaki. If you want to chime in on Sasaki, on the Padres offseason, on what you think, you can do that throughout the next hour and 20 minutes. We are taking you up until 9 p.m. here on 97.3 The Fan. Phone number to call, as always, 833-288-0973. Again, the phone number, 833-288-0973. If you want to get involved, would love to hear from you on this Wednesday night. We'll continue to talk about the Padres offseason and dive into some other storylines, some other articles, maybe even crazy ideas that have been thrown out in the last week or so. We continue our Padres conversation after this on 97.3 The Fan. (7:44) here on 97.3 The Fan. Sam Levitt with you. here on Inside San Diego Baseball as we take you up until 9 p.m. on this Wednesday night. I am remote this week here in New York, Long Island, New York, to be exact. Talking baseball in San Diego. Technology is amazing. Frank Marchese back inside our San Diego studios, doing a great job getting us on the air here tonight as we talk all things Padres off-season. We've, in the last 40 minutes or so, talked a lot about Roki Sasaki, the headline right now of the Major League Baseball off-season. I'll say he's even a headline beyond Juan Soto right now for all the reasons that we described earlier, the bargain he is, the immense talent he has, and the fact that he could go anywhere, and we really don't know what's going to happen in the next month or two with Roki Sasaki. And obviously, from a Padres standpoint, we're not really too concerned about Juan Soto as far as the Padres and a reunion there, but the idea of Sasaki signing with the Padres, being in this rotation for years to come, that seems to be something that is on the table. And as we've discussed the last couple of segments here to open up the show, there are reasons and things you can look to and point at that would indicate that maybe there is a chance that Roki Sasaki would come to the San Diego Padres, would be his preferred destination. We'll get to your phone calls here in a moment. 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973, the phone number to call. Before I get to our first phone call of the program, I want to bring in our great producer back in San Diego, Frank Marchese. Frank, I know you always have thoughts about what we're discussing here on the show. Your thoughts about Roki Sasaki, the situation going down right now?
I mean, I think he's a fantastic pitcher. And again, the fact that he is young enough to be a part of that minor league deal thing where it's only a couple $1 million, that should be intriguing to just about everyone. The only thing that I would say to kind of disagree with that is, like, say, let's just say we live in a world where the White Sox get him, right?
Okay.
They're not going to be able to re-sign him. So what's the point of going after him if you're not going to be able to spend the money to keep him? Now, the Padres are in that spot where they can. The Dodgers, the Mets, the Yankees, the Cubs even are all in that spot to where they can bring him in with the hopes of keeping him for the long term. So I don't think, while theoretically, yes, every team should be in on him, there are teams that realistically have a chance to keep him, and those are the teams I think that should be at the top of the list as far as where he would go.
Yeah, I think that the counterpoint to worrying about that would be it's something that you would have to worry about years down the road, right?
No, you're not
now,
wrong.
Of course, now you do make a fair point in this sense. Look, you'd have to pay him at least an arbitration, and that would potentially be major money. Now, that would be a good problem to have because that would mean Sasaki lives up to the hype and what he could be, right? And that would also be the same line of thinking when he's a free agent, right? If he is a free agent at the age of 29, let's say, you would have to face signing him or extending him at some point and possibly paying him a lot in arbitration. Look, I think for a lot of these teams, they're probably going to worry about that when the time comes, right? Let's say for some reason Roki Sasaki went to the Tampa Bay Rays, okay? Who they were mentioned in that article by Jeff Passan for whatever it's worth. Let's say Sasaki went to the Tampa Bay Rays, a team that is not going to sign you to a $200, $300 million deal. Well, I'd be willing to guess that Sasaki would come up with the Rays, play a number of years, and ultimately get traded somewhere else because that's just what the Rays do with these types of guys. Really, really good guys, whether they're pitchers or position players. So when you take that line of thinking, hey, if you were to go to a team that can't afford him long term, well, guess what? They're probably going to trade him at some point to whoever. And then, it'll be everybody else's problem to worry about. But it's a good point, Frank. It's a fair point. So we'll see. Let's keep on talking about Roki Sasaki. Go to our first phone call of the night. Let's go up to San Francisco. It's John calling in to 97.3 The Fan. John, welcome into the program here tonight. How's it going?
Sammy, I'm so happy to hear your voice. It's a long-time listener, first-time caller, and always happy to hear you whenever you're talking Padres ball, honestly. But
I appreciate that.
I wanted to get on here. Yeah, of course. I wanted to get on here, obviously, talk about Roki Sasaki because he's all the buzz. And the Padres are, I think, at a unique advantage in some cases. I think while, yes, the Dodgers are clear favorites, and you know what, I'd honestly be willing to put money on that. Unfortunately, they got a lot of talent, and we as Padre fans know how talent can really kind of hinder a ball club's ability in order to find cohesiveness and really kind of build that sort of chemistry amongst each other. And I think Roki Sasaki, it really kind of questions, my real question is, what does he want really? Does he want to win a championship every year, or does he really want to be like the ace of the organization? Does he want to be the centerpiece of an organization and really kind of, grow into something and honestly become a legend? Because if he just goes on the Dodgers and, I could possibly see them winning another World Series, will he be the centerpiece, or will it be Ohtani or Yamamoto or Glasnow,
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah, look, John, I think it's an excellent point. I think this comes down to what Sasaki wants and truly his personality and what he envisions for himself the early part of his major league career, at least. Look, going to the Dodgers is going to be way different than going to pretty much any other major league team. Now, you could look at the Yankees, you could look at the Mets, the Cubs, teams in big markets and say, well, look, you could go to the Yankees. They just went to the World Series. Well, that's a bit of a different situation than going to the Dodgers, who, number one, spend more than anybody. Number two, just won the World Series. Number three, have as many stars as any team has in the major leagues, but also have two Japanese superstars already in Ohtani and Yamamoto. And is that something that Sasaki will think about one way or another? Is it attractive to go join Ohtani and Yamamoto, two guys who have come over to the U.S., who are having a lot of success, who are stars in their own right? Look, that may be something that is very attractive to join up with those guys, to join up with the Dodgers, to join that infrastructure there. It could be something that's very attractive, but we just don't know that. Or is it something where Sasaki says, you know what, I'd rather go to a team where I can be more of the guy, have a maybe a more significant role on this team than just being another piece on an already superstar-laden team. The Padres have stars in their own right. Let's not forget that. They certainly do. But it is a different situation because the Dodgers just won the World Series, and the Dodgers financially, they're doing things that, no other team is doing right now. And obviously they have, Ohtani and Yamamoto there already. So it comes down to his personality. It comes down to potentially his relationship with Yu Darvish, right? We know that there is a relationship there. How much does that play a factor? Does Roki Sasaki look at things and say, you know what? I'd prefer to go a couple hours south and play alongside one of the guys I grew up idolizing in Yu Darvish and maybe forge my own path a little bit and be more the guy in San Diego. Again, the interesting part about this whole discussion with Sasaki is we're just talking about what does he want. It's not about money. Usually, this stuff comes down to money. It comes down to how much a guy's going to get paid, who the team is, what that team can bring. But let's be honest about it. Normally in free agency, the number one thing that a player is worried about, that a team is worried about, that an agent is worried about, it's not every situation, it's not the only thing, but typically what it comes down to is the dollar figure. And this is a really unique scenario, and it's not a typical free agency scenario at all. This is a unique scenario where it's not about that, where it's about what does the player want? What do they envision? What can teams offer that player beyond money? Whether that's comfort, whether that's coaching, whether that's a nice city, whether that's nice facilities, whether that's proximity to locations you want to be close to, whatever that means. It is one of those real different situations where it is not about the money. And look, it would make I think, a lot of sense, right? Would any of us be shocked for a number of different reasons if Roki Sasaki wakes up one day and says, I want to go to the LA Dodgers for such and such reasons because, they obviously have a great team. They obviously have the potential to win, in years to come. They have Otani. They have Yamamoto. I want to join up with those guys. Look, I think we'd all look at it and say, well, we wish it were the Padres, but it is what it is. And now you're going to have to, hope to beat Roki Sasaki. And by the way, if they get Roki Sasaki, the Dodgers, doesn't mean they're automatically winning a World Series. We all know how that works. So we'll see. It's going to be really, really interesting. And I think the fascinating part about it is, again, this is not something that is about money. And it's not a typical free agent scenario. It's about what can a team offer a player at 23 years old who everybody thinks is going to be a superstar. What can they offer that player beyond money? What comfort can you offer them? What guarantees can you offer them? What situation can you put them in? What kind of coaching can you offer them? What's going to make that player happy? What's going to make that player be his best? That's what it comes down to when it comes to this whole Roki Sasaki situation. On the other side of this break, we'll take more of your phone calls at 833-288-0973. We'll also dive into some other Padre-related topics. Hour number 2 of Inside San Diego Baseball coming up next right here on 97.3 The Fan.
It's time for an inside look at what's cooking on the San Diego Padres hot stove as the team gets ready for the 2025 season.
Swing and a miss. Padres win.
Sam Levitt breaks down the Padres offseason moves and provides an in-depth look at everything you need to know before the Padres take the field for spring training.
Swinging a high fly ball. Deep left center. This one way back and gone.
Plus the latest headlines from around Major League Baseball and analysis of what's happening around the big leagues.
Breaking news out of baseball.
Welcome to Inside San Diego Baseball with the Padres Radio Network's pre- and post-game host, Sam Levitt.
Hour number 2 of Inside San Diego Baseball on this Wednesday night, right here on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Sam Levitt with you, taking you up until 9 p.m. as we continue to discuss all things San Diego Padres, the offseason, the developing story involving Japanese right-handed pitcher Roki Sasaki. I am here in New York at the Levitt household here on Long Island, coming to you here tonight, maybe the first ever talk show here on 97.3 The Fan broadcast from New York, but using the magic of technology here tonight. We've got Frank Marchese doing a great job and chiming in from time to time back inside our San Diego studios, and we're having fun talking plenty about Roki Sasaki. We will dive into a number of different topics in this final hour of the program as well. We'll talk about a player that would be very, very attractive for the Padres to acquire this winter, but that would certainly cost a lot and cost a major prospect. We'll talk about that and the idea of if that is something you would consider as a San Diego Padres fan based on what the Padres need and some of their budgetary constraints here this offseason. We'll talk about that coming up in just a little bit. We'll also go through the finalists for the various awards, whether it be Rookie of the Year or Manager of the Year, the two awards that we'll be most focused on here in San Diego with Jackson Merrill and Mike Schilt up for those two awards. But we'll also run through all the awards. We'll give you our picks. Frank and I will go through them, and we'll also tell you who we think will win it. We'll give you our picks, and then we'll tell you who we think will win those awards. So we'll go through that a little bit later as well. And, of course, we are taking your phone calls up until 9 p.m. at 833-288-0973. Again, 833-288-0973. Speaking of the phones, let's go out to John calling in from Chula Vista. John, welcome to Inside San Diego Baseball. Oh, no, John. You dropped off the line. Come on, John. We were just ready to go to you, John. All right. Well, you can call in again if you want. And anybody can call in, 833-288-0973. If you want to chime in, talk about Roki Sasaki or anything else you want to discuss on this Wednesday night here on Inside San Diego Baseball. All right, let's get to what we just teased. And that was a story that went up on ESPN.com. This was from Buster Olney, and this went up earlier today, written earlier this morning by Buster Olney. And the headline of the article is this: Garrett Crochet trade fits. Phillies, Yankees, Dodgers, more. Well, the more part of what Buster Olney had to write was a subheading that said San Diego Padres. So let's read what ESPN writer, reporter Buster Olney had to say about the Padres in regards to Garrett Crochet, a guy that the Padres have been linked to before. We know the Padres have potentially been interested in Garrett Crochet before. We know there may have been some discussions going on regarding Crochet around the trade deadline, and then Crochet and his agents, essentially said that he would have to, sign an extension somewhere and kind of, muddied it up for Chris Getz, and the White Sox organization doesn't end up getting traded at the deadline, and maybe I'll get a little bit more into what was said around the deadline. But for now, let's read what Buster Olney had to write here earlier today. This is Buster Olney. Padres GM A.J. Preller has demonstrated he is capable of adding or subtracting any caliber of player. He has traded for and swapped away Juan Soto, who will likely shatter the record for biggest contract ever this winter. Last spring, he made a deal with Getz for Dylan Cease. With Cease and Michael King a year from free agency and Joe Musgrove expected to miss next season following elbow surgery, Crochet would be a big help for the San Diego rotation for at least a couple of years. But some rival evaluators say it would be all but impossible for the Padres to land Crochet unless they include Ethan Salas, the 18-year-old who might be baseball's best catching prospect, and/or Leodalis DeVries, an 18-year-old shortstop who are ranked among the top 30 prospects in the majors. Even for Preller, a price tag involving one or both might be too high, given that the Padres need an influx of cheaper players, given some of their big-dollar obligations. Now, it goes without saying that Garrett Crochet would be an awesome fit for this Padres rotation. Number one, he has 2 years of control left. He is still just 25 years old. He was really, really good most of this season for the Chicago White Sox, especially in the first half of the year. He ultimately made 32 starts, 146 innings. He struck out 209 in those 146 innings, a 3.58 ERA overall in this first go-round as a starting pitcher, and ended up throwing a good amount of innings, 146 innings, so you would think he would be ready to go next season and give you 180 to 200 innings. The problem is that he has 2 years of control left. He's going to be very, very highly coveted. This is without even getting into what he and his agents essentially did around the trade deadline and really making it hard for the White Sox to trade him. I'll get into that in a moment. But the problem for the Padres is this. Beyond Leodalis DeVries and Ethan Salas, we know the system's a little bit, I don't want to say light in talent, but it's not where it was at this time last year. The depth is not there, especially at the upper levels of the minor leagues, and that is because the Padres traded a lot of guys away between the Arise trade and the Cease trade and the Adam trade and the Scott trade. This is no secret. This system is in more of a rebuilding mode right now, and the good news is that the Padres have a general manager in A.J. Preller who has proven, really now time and time again, that he can identify talent and rebuild the system really quickly, and also rebuild the reputation of a system really quickly. The question is, if the Padres had an opportunity to get Garrett Crochet for at least 2 years, something they really need in their rotation, including in a year in 2025 that absolutely feels like a season where the Padres right here, right now, have a team, a core that is ready to win, that's ready to compete for a World Series title, hopefully. I think that will be the expectation heading into spring training and heading into the season. Crochet would only cost, estimates are maybe even under $3 million in arbitration this season. He is an ideal fit as far as an incredibly talented pitcher who would not cost very much, and you would have multiple years of control. The question becomes, if you are A.J. Preller, if you're the Padres front office, would you touch an Ethan Salas? Would you touch a Leodalis DeVries? Now, I want to preface what I'm about to say by reminding everybody that Ethan Salas, today, is 18 years old. Ethan Salas turned 18 during this past season. And I want to make that very, very, very clear before we dive into what Ethan Salas did at Fort Wayne, because he was 18 years old, catching, 18 years old. But offensively, didn't go super well, regardless of age. He hit 206. He had 4 home runs. He did have 27 RBIs, 53 RBIs. We know defensively he is well beyond his age. He's considered an elite defender, an elite receiver already. It's one of the things that evaluators have loved about Ethan Salas for a really, really long time. I think the question is, are the Padres in any kind of spot where they would be willing to touch, whether it be a Salas or a DeVries, who's even younger and has even less minor league experience? Would they be willing to part with one of those guys for somebody like a Garrett Crochet, who is an ideal fit, both from a talent standpoint, a need standpoint, and a money standpoint? Is it off the table? That's my question. Because for the longest time, I think everybody sort of thought that Salas and DeVries are untouchable. But the reality is that A.J. Preller is a guy who likes to make trades. A.J. Preller is a guy who has never been shy to make trades you don't expect and also trade big-time prospects. That's just the fact. Never been shy to do that. And is there a world where we wake up one day and we're surprised by a trade that happens for a guy that would make a ton of sense for the Padres in Crochet, and maybe those guys aren't as untouchable as they seem in making a move for a team that in 2025 is ready to win right here, right now? That is my question. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying it should happen. But that is my question, and a question that is looming larger in my brain as you start to assess the Padres' needs moving forward into this coming season in particular. As the Padres maybe try to get creative with how they improve this team on somewhat of a budget. Is that totally off the table? And again, I'm just reacting to Buster Olney writing it on ESPN.com this morning, but it did make me think. Is that totally off the table? If you woke up one day this offseason and you read that headline, would you be mad? Would you be happy? Would you be worried? That's my question to you. And it's a system that is not in the same place it was a year ago, where you could maybe make a move for somebody like Crochet without touching those guys. You could make moves for Cease and Arise and Adam and Scott without touching Salas or DeVries. System isn't really in that spot right now. So, again, as we try to sit here week after week and day after day here on the station and think about ways to improve this current team, that's sort of my question. And, look, I'd be willing to bet that those two guys are at spring training in Peoria come February, and they're there, and we're all excited about them, and I'm there taking videos of them on the backfields and, you know, giving you a glimpse on what those guys are doing, just like we've done the last couple of years. But my question is it out of the realm of possibility? Are they totally untouchable? And I don't know necessarily the answer to that question, because a guy in Garrett Crochet, man, you look at the talent and the numbers and the needs and the money, would make a lot of sense. Really would. Frank, what do you think? Is Ethan Salas, Leo DeVries, are they untouchable? Or do a 2025 Padres team that's trying to get better, is that something you think they would even consider at this point in time?
I thought I made this pretty clear last week that no, I would not be trading them. I would not be touching them. Those are your only two guys that you have in the minor leagues that really have any worth or value right now. So let's just say you were to trade one of them or both of them, God forbid, to do that, like say at the deadline for a guy who you know is going to help you beyond any shadow of a doubt, at least get to the championship series and most likely beyond. That's the only scenario that I would be trading those guys. And even then I'd be hesitant. You don't have anything down in the minor leagues to supplement, as my lights just went out, to supplement a possible trade to help you out later on down the line. Absolutely not. Do not touch them. Garrett Crochet, like I said, I was at the game he pitched last year. I was very disappointed when he left because I was really enjoying watching him pitch. But for that price, as far as the prospect is concerned, no chance. Not a chance.
Now, here's the other thing to consider about Garrett Crochet, and I mentioned this about his agents and what they came out and did and said around the trade deadline. And you may have forgot this because it looked like Crochet was going to get traded for months heading towards that trade deadline. He was on a terrible team in the White Sox. But remember, his agents and Crochet, they made it known that he wanted a contract extension in order to pitch in the postseason. And he essentially said he didn't want to pitch out of the bullpen and wanted a starter's routine, which didn't really mesh for two reasons. Number one, I don't know that any team was willing to give him an extension right there, right now, to make sure he was going to pitch in the postseason. And also, with the innings limits he was on and the fact that he hadn't thrown anywhere close to the amount of innings he was already at. Remember, we were talking about this over the summer. You essentially, if you wanted to move him to the bullpen, if you had that idea of, hey, we're going to move him to the bullpen for a stretch run for 2024 and then it's going to be a starter, he essentially said he didn't want to do it. So the point is, it made it very complicated for the White Sox to make that trade and find a trade partner. And somebody brought this up in the chat, and I don't know that it's a fair comparison, but with Crochet, would you be fearful? And again, this may not be fair to Garrett Crochet, but we're just going off what happened around the deadline.
Speculating here.
Speculating. Would you be in a situation where Crochet says, hey, I'm not going to pitch, over 100 pitches, multiple outings in a row because I'm worried about my free agency in a couple of years. Somebody said in the chat, Josh Hader 2.0. Again, probably a little bit unfair to Garrett Crochet, but I don't know. Or if you're a team trading for him, are you fearful there may be certain rules or things that come attached to Crochet because ultimately, there's a worry about an extension, or free agency. Again, that's probably not fair to Crochet, but maybe part of something a team thinks about. I don't know.
This is not even reacting to that, but if a player I'm trying to trade for, a guy who has really burst onto the scene last year. I mean, before last year? When did you hear about Garrett Crochet? He wasn't a big household name. He wasn't an ace. Doesn't matter what team he was on. This is a guy who's been really.
He was a good reliever, and he dealt with a lot of injuries. Yes.
This is a guy who has been a household name as an ace, as a big name trade piece for 1 year. For a guy to give out rules for what you're going to have to do to me, I'm sorry. For me personally, that's an automatic deal breaker. Even if it's down the stretch, if it's right now, you are not telling me, as a guy who has been a name for 1 year, you are not going to tell me how I am going to use you, especially if it's in a big spot. We saw that with Hader a couple of years ago, and it cost the Padres a playoff spot. I'm not doing that again. Not a chance. If you're going to put rules on me, we're not talking anymore. That's it. It's that simple.
Yeah, look, again, I don't know if this is fair or not to even discuss this with Crochet because the situation at the deadline was unique in and of itself. But, yeah,
Still,
no, look, it's a fair point. No, it's a fair point.
Don't tell me how to
because
use you.
I'll tell you what. If I'm A.J. Preller and I'm trading the caliber of a prospect like an Ethan Salas for Garrett Crochet, I don't want any rules.
Exactly. Yeah, you're going.
Crochet, whether I want to sign him to an extension or not. I'm with you there. I'm with you. That, to me, that would hurt if, you got a player to show up after trading a guy like Ethan Salas for him, and then all of a sudden you've got a situation where you can't use him exactly the way you want. And again, Crochet's an interesting scenario because he's 2 years away from free agency. Basically, right now, the projections are he's going to make like $3 million in arbitration, so he's not making that much. So, yeah, look, he could be a guy who looks at it and says, hey, either give me an extension, you can use me however you want, or I got to protect my arm and get to free agency. Look, we've seen this with guys before, so.
And it's irritating every time.
Yeah, and look, also, it just comes down to this. Let's say you can use Garrett Crochet exactly how you want. Again, I can't imagine a world where you can trade for that. A guy who's that hot as far as a trade target this winter and not give up one of the major two guys. I just don't see it.
No,
If I'm
you
the White
can't.
Sox, hey, let's be honest. If I'm the White Sox and I have major interest in Crochet from multiple teams, and I'm sure they will. I mean, if the Padres call me, I'm saying you got to give me one of these guys. And if the answer is no and they're untouchable, then I'm probably hanging up the phone.
Even that,
that's
even,
a reality.
Even what Scrapey said before, the thought would be if they want a guy who can come in and play right now, that guy's probably Jackson Merrill. That's another guy I'm not trading.
That's no way, please. I'm chucking the phone into the Pacific Ocean.
Exactly. It's not worth the headache of having a guy who's going to put so many restrictions on you for that. It's not worth it.
All right, speaking of Jackson Merrill, when we come back, let's dive into these awards. It is award season starting next week. The finalists for the Baseball Writers Association of America awards, the end-of-year awards, the finalists are out. Mike Schilt, a finalist for Manager of the Year. Jackson Merrill, a finalist for Rookie of the Year. We will go through both leagues, the award finalists. We will make our picks. We will tell you who we'd pick and who we think will win, because those might be two different things. So we'll start doing that when we come back. If you want to get a phone call in, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973, the phone number to call. You're listening to Inside San Diego Baseball on this Wednesday night. We're taking you up until 9 p.m. on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. 8:25 here on 97.3 The Fan on this Wednesday night. Sam Levitt with you inside San Diego baseball as our second hour of the program continues. We are with you until at 9 p.m. Sam Levitt with you. Frank Marchese also with us, chiming in from time to time, running the board on the quote-unquote other side of the glass here tonight as we talk all things Padres baseball. We just had a lengthy discussion on Garrett Crochet, on if Ethan Salas, on if Leodalis DeVries would be absolutely, positively untouchable this offseason. I think it's a fair question to ask. My guess would be they are totally untouchable, but I do think it's a fair question to ask. And if you missed any of that conversation from just a few minutes ago, remember, you can catch any portion of our Inside San Diego Baseball off-season radio program on the Inside San Diego Baseball podcast feed, available on the Odyssey app or wherever you find your podcast. We did plenty of talking about Roki Sasaki in the first hour. In fact, I think we only talked about Roki Sasaki in the first hour, and now we've branched out to some other topics, and we'll talk about the award finalists for Rookie of the Year, Manager of the Year, MVP in both leagues. We'll do that coming up in just a second. Frank and I will take you through those. Some scores to tell you about. If you're driving around tonight, you want the latest on what's going on in San Diego sports. The San Diego Gulls and the San Jose Barracudas, they are tied at 1 in the second period. I don't know, is that game, Frank, in San Jose, or is that that's in San Jose? All right, so they're tied at 1 in the second period. Hopefully the Gulls pull out a win there in the AHL. College basketball from last night. Aztecs beat Occidental 149. USD lost to Portland State 85-76. UCSD beat Sacramento State 64-54 last night. All the college basketball Division I men's basketball action going around San Diego teams last night. So a little score update for you. See, we're just not a Padres show. We give you a little taste of everything going on in San Diego. All right, taking a look at these BBWA awards. The finalists were revealed earlier this week. Now, I said BBWA. I guess it's just Baseball Writers Association of America. So BWAA, I guess it actually is. Anyway, not that it really matters. But let's go through these awards real quick. And the way we'll do this with Frank and I is, now I'm going to be honest with you. I said we would pick who we thought would win and who will win. I'll say, you can say if those two things are different at any time. I will say, looking through this quickly, I think I was more in line with like who I thought would win and who should win, or who will win. I think those are pretty much in line almost the whole way through. Now, I think it is BBWA, by the way. I don't know. Who cares? Well, actually, I'm sure many people care. Anyway, back to the awards. So let's start with this one, Frank. And again, if there's a situation where, you know, you say who you'd pick, but it might be different than who you think will actually win, you can mention that. But I think for the most part, mine kind of fall in line here, in the same way of who I would pick and who I think will actually win. All right, so let's start with this one. NL MVP. The finalists are Francisco Lindor, shortstop from the New York Mets; Ketel Marte, second baseman for the D-backs; Shohei Ohtani, DH of the LA Dodgers. And before we make our picks here, I'll say this. Marte, wow. I mean, 36 home runs, 95 RBIs. You think about the seasons that Lindor and Ohtani had. I mean, the fact that Ketel Marte is the other finalist, that's pretty amazing, because I feel like nobody talks about Ketel Marte, and he's going to probably finish in third in this voting. I mean, it's actually amazing for the D-backs and Ketel Marte.
Yeah, absolutely. A very a sneaky good season. By the way, you ready for me to blow your mind right now?
Yes.
It's BBWAA.
Right, BBWAA.
So 2 and 2.
I got all confused.
For me, it's, yes, Ketel Marte had a very sneaky good season, but it's going to come down to Lindor and Ohtani.
Yes. Now, I think we're going to agree here that Ohtani's going to win it.
Because he's the greatest player of this generation. He's just going to win it every year because his name is Shohei Ohtani.
Well, 54 home runs, 59 stolen bases, as we all know by now. The first player in Major League history to ever do that. Led the NL in runs scored, in home runs, RBIs, on-base percentage, slugging, and total bases. Lindor, just quickly, the case for him. Hit 309, 26 home runs after May 20th, after he switched into, I think that's when he switched into the leadoff spot. Yeah, 33 home runs, 844 OPS, 7.8 Fangraph WAR, tied for the highest mark in his career. Now, look, I'd pick Ohtani because the numbers are so ridiculous. I pick Ohtani because I just don't know how ultimately you're going to look at his statistical season and not pick him. But I will say this. If we're actually talking about the word valuable and where the New York Mets would have been with or without Francisco Lindor, if that is our metric for valuable, then it should be Francisco Lindor, because I don't think the Mets are even close to where they were this season without Francisco Lindor. I think the Dodgers don't win 98 games, but I think they probably have a playoff caliber season without Shohei Ohtani. I think the tough part is, Frank, the numbers for Ohtani are so ridiculous that it just sort of is what it is. And I can't make that up with the quote-unquote what is actually valuable case for Francisco Lindor. So I'd pick Ohtani, although I think there's a great case for Lindor if you actually understand what he meant to the Mets.
No, and I agree with you 100%. And I had posted this on Twitter a while ago and got roasted for it because nobody actually reads what I write. Ohtani is a Dodger. When Ohtani came in, the Dodgers have a streak of, 9 straight years where they've been in the championship series or the World Series?
Yeah.
This was Kevin Durant going to the Warriors after that 72-10 season.
Totally fair.
They were going to be there no matter what. They were going to be there with or without Ohtani. So Ohtani is a Dodger. Francisco Lindor in 2024 was the Mets. They were 11 games under 500, 0-5 to start the year. He was god awful at the start of this season. Once he turned it around, the team started winning. They started to fight against Atlanta. They started to claw back in the wild card. He hits the home run in game 1 of the doubleheader against Atlanta after the season. He hits the grand slam that sends Philadelphia home. He was the centerpiece to so much of what turned the Mets around this year.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, I think by the actual word valuable, again, I think it's actually Lindor. Yeah, I don't think they're close without him, but unfortunately he picked a year where Ohtani's numbers were just so ridiculous. Where it's got to be Ohtani. And look, it's not Dodger loving. It is what it is. I mean, just an unbelievable season. All right, so I think we're in agreement there. AL Most Valuable Player Award, and we'll continue this into our next segment as well. Get to Rookie of the Years and Manager of the Years. AL MVP, I think it's pretty straight up. The 3 finalists are Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, Bobby Witt Jr., Judge. 58 home runs, 1159 OPS. He had a 223 OPS plus. The 1159 OPS was the highest in any full season in 20 years since Barry Bonds had a 1422 OPS in 2004. Remember, Judge won the MVP in 2022 when he hit the 62 home runs. Look, Soto had a great year. Bobby Witt Jr. is an outstanding player, 30 home runs, 50 steals in 2023, and then he had an even better 2024, hit 332, 32 homers, 31 steals, 977 OPS. Much like the case for Ohtani, the numbers for Judge, this is a numbers thing, and he was just otherworldly as far as what he did in the regular season. Got to be Judge.
What do Judge and Ohtani have in common this season?
What did Judge and Ohtani have in common this season?
they both disappeared when the playoffs started.
Well, Ohtani didn't. Well, he didn't have a good World
yeah.
Series. Ohtani had some moments before that.
He had some moments,
Yeah.
but other than that, he
No,
was
look,
to be found.
You're totally right. Judge had a brutal postseason, no way around it, and obviously had the missed fly ball that.
And they're both going to win MVPs.
Yeah, well, regular season award. I guess we should go to break now, and we'll come back and we will finish up with the Cy Youngs, Rookie of the Year, Managers of the Years. We'll have to go through it a little bit quicker. In our final segment, we are taking you up until 9 p.m. inside San Diego baseball on this Wednesday night. We'll talk about the awards. If you want to squeeze a phone call in, talk more Padres, you can do that as well at 833-288-0973. Inside San Diego baseball continues after this on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Welcome back into Inside San Diego Baseball on this Wednesday night here on 97.3 The Fan. Sam Levitt with you, taking you up until 9 p.m. talking Padres baseball and talking all things Major League Baseball as we continue the offseason here on November 13th. Frank Marchese inside our San Diego studios. I am remotely on the East Coast this week, but you know what? I listened during the break to how we're sounding. I tell you what, you wouldn't know that I'm not sitting in the studio. So technology is amazing here in 2024, and Frank's doing a great job holding things down back inside our San Diego studios. We've got about 15 minutes left in the program here tonight. So before we went to break, we were going through the finalists for the Baseball Writers Association of America Awards, the real big-time end-of-year awards across Major League Baseball. We got through NL MVP and AL MVP. So let's now go to some of the other awards here. Again, Frank and I going through the awards and telling you who we think will win, and if we think there will be a different, really who we think should win. If we do think there will be a different winner than who we think should win, then we'll kind of get into that as well, going through each award here. So let's go to NL Cy Young. 3 finalists in that category. Left-hander Chris Sale, the Braves. Paul Skeens, the Pirates. Zach Wheeler of the Phillies. My selection will be Chris Sale. I think he will win it. Led the majors, 18 wins, 2.38 ERA, 225 strikeouts. Led the NL Triple Crown as far as the strikeout number, the ERA number, the win number, some of the advanced metrics, fielding independent pitching, ERA plus. He also led those categories. Obviously, Skeens was a big-time story. Zach Wheeler had a great year, but I think Chris Sale's going to win, and I'd be very surprised, Frank, if he doesn't win this award.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I think this is Chris Sale's award to lose at this point, and a very solid season for a guy who has been so injury-plagued over the last 5 or 6 years. So this was a very nice comeback story and a great dominant pitcher.
AL Cy Young Award, 3 finalists there. Seth Lugo of the Royals, a name we know well. And how about that? 2023 Padre. Seth Lugo goes to Kansas City on a pretty friendly deal. You know, didn't cost a ton and had a 3 ERA and a 109 whip in 200-plus innings. Man, you got to give him credit how good he's become. Emmanuel Clase, different kind of candidate, a closer. 0.61 ERA, had a disastrous postseason, though. But again, this is not a postseason award. But Clase is one of the finalists. And then the guy who I think is going to pretty easily win it, that's the Tigers' Tarek Skubal, who did have a really, really good postseason, aside from giving up really one big home run. Won the AL Triple Crown for pitching, led the league in wins with 18. Led the AL in ERA at 2.39 and strikeouts at 228. That also led the major leagues. He was a huge part of the Tigers' late season run. He was as good as anybody, and I think a lot like the situation with Sale, I think this is going to be maybe an even more clear-cut win for Tarek Skubal, who had a great year.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And again, you're right. How about Seth Lugo? You know, a fantastic year in his first venture out on a starter contract. Did a fantastic job. I wonder what stupid front office wanted to keep him in the bullpen and not have him start. I wonder which stupid franchise would have done that.
I'll be the New York Mets. Look, I liked Seth a lot when he was here. He was obviously great when he was here, did a great job, earned that new contract, earned his opt-out. And, you know, really, I thought was a hard worker, good guy. Like, I'm very happy for Seth Lugo, and he's turned himself into one of the better starting pitchers in baseball. He's really, really quite the story. Again, Frank, to your point, when you think about who he was in New York and a reliever and somebody they wouldn't make into a starter, it's really remarkable. He was right. He was going to be a great starting pitcher. All right, let's get into an award that means a lot to the city of San Diego, and that is Rookie of the Year in the National League. The 3 finalists, no surprise, it is Paul Skeens, it is Jackson Merrill, it is Jackson Chourio. I would assume that it will probably be Merrill and Skeens, either 1 and 2 in whatever order in this category. That is not to say that Chourio did not end up having a really, really great rookie season. He did. Merrill was better. He was an all-star. led Major League rookies in home runs and RBIs and hits and batting average and OPS. He was unbelievably clutch, becoming the youngest player to hit 5 game-tying or go-ahead home runs in the 9th inning or later in the same season. He did it all while playing center field, a position he never played as a pro in his life. Now, Paul Skeens led Major League rookies with a 1.96 ERA. He started the All-Star game for the National League. He was a strikeout machine. And look, let's just be honest about it. On a national level, had a lot of headlines for a while. I think Jackson Merrill took some of those from him as the season went along, and it became clear in my eyes that Merrill should be Rookie of the Year. My pick would be Merrill. I hope he wins it. He certainly deserves it. I'm a bit fearful that the Skeens hype machine and some of the writers who vote on this stuff may not be able to look past that and what was built as far as the hype throughout the year. And by the way, it's no disrespect to Paul Skeens. He was an excellent, excellent rookie. He deserved the hype. He was great. I think as an everyday player and all the things we've discussed about Merrill for months and months and months, he should be Rookie of the Year. It almost makes you wish that there were 2 different awards for Rookie Pitcher and Rookie Position Player of the Year. I think it should be Merrill. I think he deserves it. I think he's earned it as an everyday player. I hope he wins it. There is a part of me that is fearful, though, Frank, that we may get the final ballot from this and get the announcement, and the Paul Skeens hype train maybe just never was able to that Jackson Merrill was never able to overcome the Skeens hype train and what the writers could possibly do. I think it should be Merrill, but I am concerned.
I'm not fearful of it. I'm expecting it.
Okay.
Well,
there you go.
Paul Skeens was not as good as advertised. He was better than advertised. He was not as good as people said he was. He was better. He was a fantastic starter. And of all the things that you mentioned there, him being the starter for the All-Star game, to me, is the least impressive because the All-Star game means absolutely nothing. Once they took the home field for the World Series away from the All-Star game, it became a meaningless game. So he can have the All-Star start, whatever. Jackson Merrill, you never heard about Jackson Merrill. We were talking about it here, but you never heard Jackson Merrill nationally until he went on that tear in Miami and in Pittsburgh. Once he started doing what he had been doing here all season on the East Coast, getting that attention, that's when you really started to hear his name switch over. Everyday player, was in the lineup from day one. My biggest hang-up about Paul Skeens is it took him 2 months before he finally got up here, and then look what he did when he did.
Yeah,
you can't miss a quarter of the season and be Rookie of the Year when the other guy is in the lineup every single day from day one.
Yeah, look, I think it's a fair argument, and I think the everyday player versus pitcher is a real argument. Yes, look, I think it should be Merrill for all the reasons that we've discussed. We're going to see. I think it's going to be really close either way. I do. I do not. And again, I don't know if the ballots will ultimately come out to see how many first place votes that, one guy got over another. I think it's going to be really close, and I hope it's Jackson Merrill. He deserves it. He's earned it. But I don't know what's going to happen based on the writers and the hype and the fact that, unfortunately, this season, Jackson is also in a rookie class in the NL that has Paul Skeens, who was amazing. He was amazing and just had that narrative for so long this year. And you're right. Once Jackson started to hit the home runs and started to take some of that narrative away, which he did, I feel like nationally it started to shift towards Merrill as the season went on. I don't think there's any...
It wasn't until he got to the East Coast and did it, though. That was the big turning point.
Yeah, no, there was definitely a point in the season where the Merrill momentum started to come, and you started to hear people across the country put Merrill as the front runner. Are these voters ultimately going to make the right choice? I think what's the right choice over Skeens, and that's not a negative on Skeens. He was great. I just think Merrill was better, and he's an everyday player, and I think that's a fair argument. All right, so we're going to see what happens with NL Rookie of the Year. That's a very important one for Padres fans. Quickly, AL Rookie of the Year, Colton Cowser, Luis Gil, Austin Wells. Cowser hit 303 with 6 home runs in the first month of the season, finished with 24 home runs as a rookie, led AL rookies with a 123 OPS plus. Luis Gil still had rookie eligibility in 2024. Finished with a 3.50 ERA. Austin Wells, he had a really nice rookie season for the Yankees, and was sort of solidified as their catcher of the future. Gil was really good early on, but then he struggled quite a bit. I'd probably pick Colton Cowser for this one, Frank. But I guess it could be. I don't think it's going to be Wells. I guess it could be Gil, but I'd pick Cowser.
I would do the same thing as well. And again, we talk about Blake Snell being so bad in the start of the year and then turning it on later. Gil was the exact opposite. He started off like a house of fire and then just fell off the cliff to the point where they didn't pitch him until somehow the elimination game of the post in the World Series. But I would pick Cowser in this as well.
All right, final 2 awards here. AL Manager of the Year. Let's do that one first. A.J. Hinch of the Tigers, Matt Quatraro of the Royals, Stephen Vogt of the Guardians. Obviously, the Royals had a really nice season, 86 wins. Vogt and the Guardians had a terrific season as his first year at the helm in Cleveland. And then, I don't know that anybody would have said this midsummer, but A.J. Hinch leading the young Tigers to a wild card berth. They won 24 of their final 34 games, just went on an unbelievable run, then ended up winning a postseason series against the Astros. Look, to me, it's either Vogt or Hinch because the Guardians were so good. I'll tell you what, Frank, I'd vote for A.J. Hinch. I mean, that team nobody thought would be a postseason team in the middle of the summer, and went on an incredible run and somehow, some way, just totally turned the fortune of their season around. I know Vogt was great. He may win it, but I'd pick A.J. Hinch. I think this is a unique situation where that turnaround with that team in particular and the way they had to navigate that pitching all year in the bullpen, a lot of that falls on A.J. Hinch, and man, he was at the helm for that turnaround.
Not just to make it to the postseason as well, but they made the divisional series as well. They got out of the wild card.
Correct.
I would definitely vote for Hinch on this. That was a wild turnaround, a wild final 2 months of the year for Detroit. And it starts at the top. You got to get somebody fired. You got to get them fired up somehow. And that's your manager.
All right, so Frank and I are in alignment here. I have a feeling we're not going to be in alignment on this final one. NL Manager of the Year, Carlos Mendoza of the Mets, Pat Murphy of the Brewers, Mike Shiltz of your San Diego Padres. Mendoza had a Mets team that began the year 0-5. They were 11 games under 500. From that point on, they went 65-38 to get into the postseason. Pat Murphy won the NL Central with the Brewers. They were pretty great wire to wire. Mike Shiltz, 93 wins with the Padres, wild card berth. Obviously had a terrific second half, 34-18 in August and September to get the number 1 spot in the wild card standings, and with a team that cut a pretty massive amount of payroll heading into the 2024 season. Frank, your pick out of Murphy, Shiltz, or Mendoza?
I want Mendoza because of what the Mets did with who they did it with. And then I believe it will be Shiltz who wins it because he was able to right this ship, came in, gave a clear identity to this team, did not waver even after, the 50 and 49 at the All-Star break when they were 5 games over and end up going into the break 1 game over. Turned it around for the second half of the year, played the eventual champions in the division series, unfortunately got knocked out in 5. I think it will be Shiltz. I want Mendoza, and this is coming from a guy who said that Mendoza was going to be a lame duck manager and that he should be nowhere near Queens in the middle of May.
Yeah, you were off on Mendoza. He did a nice job. I think this is probably a close vote with the writers between Mendoza and Schilt. Now, Murphy had a nice year, but just like
he led the division all year. Same thing with Vogt.
he doesn't have the storyline, and storylines in this are really important. They are, just like A.J. Hinch. Okay, A.J. Hinch didn't win the most games out of those guys we just talked about, but he had the storyline. I think it should be Schilt. I'd pick Schilt, and I think Schilt will win it. Again, to your point, I think the overall season turnaround from what happened in 2023 with the Padres, the fact that they did win 93 games, I mean, that's a lot of games. I know it wasn't as dramatic as the Mets because of how badly the Mets started, but let's be honest about it. That was one heck of a turnaround in the second half for the Padres. They played like a totally different team than the team that, sort of hovered around 500 for 100 games. So I'd pick Schilt. I think it will be Schilt. We'll be shocked if the writers go with, a New York guy in Mendoza based on sort of the magical nature the Mets season became. Look, I'm not going to be shocked. I'd pick Schilt. I hope it's Schilt. I think it'll be Schilt. We'll see. Those are the awards.
I wouldn't be shocked either way. I wouldn't be hurt either way. Both managers absolutely deserve it.
Yeah. All right. Well, those are all the awards. Good conversation there. And that is just about going to do it on the second edition of Off-Season Inside San Diego Baseball. We will be back with you next Wednesday. I should be back in the studio, 7 p.m. here on 97.3 The Fan next Wednesday, and we will have another 2-hour conversation about the Padres, off-season news, the latest Major League headlines, and much, much more. A big thank you to Frank Marchese for being on the board here tonight. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. Ben and Woods will talk to you at 6 a.m. tomorrow right here on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan.